It's on. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, take out your notes, have them ready to go. We're going to jump right into it. Just to give you an update, yeah, that was kind of cheery last time. We finished the Mongol trading game and then the subsequent Black Death, which we saw some patterns that took place in here as well as in history. The more contact you have with people, the more likelihood that you could incur the Black Death. And yeah, it was mostly over here. Why was that? Because you were girls? Was that it? Because initially, yeah, you got cooties. There you go. These guys are like, I'm not going to get no cooties from all those girls because their cooties are dangerous cooties. They're like going to kill you. Whatever, cooties. It's like, they did cooties when I was your age. Do they still use that word now? Seriously? Little kids do. Yeah, when you're in the 9th grade, it's like, not cooties. There's something else. Anyway, so you can put that down. Write that down. I mean, the Black Death. Are you ready? Write that down. We're in school. We're in class. The Black Death did kill a lot of people. And actually, you already know. Marin, sort of roughly what percentage of people were killed in, say, Europe, Middle East, China, other parts of North Africa that came in contact with the Black Death? No, not 90%. You did hear that, but it was in reference to the Americas and the Pacific Island nations. When mostly Europeans then came in contact with those people for the first time, you're right. It hit them hard, like about 90%. What about here, though, Jordan? About 1/3, higher in some places, lower in others. And some of the things that we do now are tried and true ways of trying to avoid catching a communicable disease, a contagious disease, and that is separation, literally quarantining and separating people. And so, like, sometimes if people were sick, they were just, like, quarantined. And they didn't have the kind of medications and so forth today. People who catch COVID today, in this country, there are a lot of resources available to them to help make sure that it doesn't hit them in a hard way. That's why they're really, it's like crush the curve. Have you ever heard that expression? Have you? Okay, so I mean, the idea is we really want to keep the spread of the disease way down for a lot of reasons. One is so that we don't overwhelm the hospitals and medical care facilities. Because, I mean, what happens if there's a whole bunch of people that need a respirator because they're having a hard time breathing because of COVID, and there's not enough respirators? Somebody doesn't get a respirator. That's not good. So that's what they're trying. That's what we're really trying to avoid, among other things and so forth. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like there's certain places you really don't want to be if you're very, very sick. Where would you rather be if you're very, very sick? Near your home or halfway around the world? You really want to get sick halfway around the world?
That way, if I die, I would have been able to say that I've seen the other side of something, like the other side of the world.
I suppose there's some logic there. How many of you guys would join her and go, yeah, I want to be like traveling abroad in some place that maybe, and maybe they do. Sometimes they do have the kind of resources available to take care of that. But sometimes they don't. Yeah, sometimes they don't. So that's always the tricky thing. Okay? So anyway, today we are going to be continuing looking at history as it takes place around that time period. We've got the background of the Mongol trade, right? Which, when the Mongol Empire was in existence, did that tend to increase, Bella, trade, or decrease? During the time of the Mongol trade, when the Mongol Empire, did it tend to increase? Yeah. With the downside of the potential of catching death and so forth. But that trade thing is going to be very, very important as we go into talking about the next thing in our unit. Have the handout that I gave you in front of you, because that's going to help you. We've got it right there. We've got this little thing right here, the major events before 1450. We talked about the Mongol invasion, Genghis Khan. We talked about the Black Death. Now we're going to get into very much the material that's in Chapter 17. I haven't assigned that officially as reading, but go ahead and get started on that. I will ultimately give you a study guide and give you a date of when the quiz is going to be, and you'll need to really, really get ready for that. But in the meantime, we're going to get into some of the material that's going to be covered in that. Yes?
Do you have any extra
Do I have any extras of the packets that I handed out? 2. 1, it's on Google Classroom, so you could download that. So that's nice to know that you have that. So those are the students that are taking it home. They have that. It just so happens, here we're going to guilt you. We're going to shame you. We went into a virgin forest, trees that had never been cut down. They were sustaining a population of endangered species and an indigenous tribe. But more important was cutting down those trees so we could make extra copies of the material. You're like, this is really over the top, Mr. Hansen. Okay, here you go. Yep. You're welcome. I do always run off like a couple of extra copies and so forth. Okay? So, if you got that, hang on to it. Got a hole punch, keep it with your materials. All right, you guys ready to go? You ready? You guys doing okay? Right? Now, don't sleep in too long tomorrow or on Saturday or on Sunday because you're coming back to school on what day? And how many days do you actually physically back in school next week? 3. And what time do you have to get up on a school day? Do you have a hard time getting up on school days? Because you slept in the day before? Yeah, I mean, it is hard. I have to remind myself that, too. I mean, it is kind of crazy. How many of you guys are like, I'm kind of tired, actually? No? Not too bad? A little bit? Yeah, okay. So, you ready? What we're going to talk about is, in this unit, we can see it's like Western Europe is transformed. Western Europe, Europe. Oh, my gosh. Like so much about Europe. What's so great about Europe during this time period? Write this down. Europe becomes powerful. They become powerful. Which is always fascinating because you're like, well, of course, I mean, Europe, I mean, good grief today, it's still got like some of the most advanced countries in the world and their economies are doing pretty well. I mean, gosh. But if you were to go back like 1,000 years ago and say, what are the parts of the world that have, you know, the largest cities and the largest advancements in science and technology and so forth? It wouldn't necessarily be Europe. It might be China. Okay, China's right up there. The Middle East, okay, advanced civilizations and so forth there. But certain things are going to be taking place in Europe during this time period that are going to set it on a path. Write this down. Europe is going to be set on a path for greatness. I suppose, you know, greatness is in the eye of the beholder. How about power? Okay. I mean, eventually, when we get to like the thing that Marion talked about, you know, like 90% of the people in the Americans and the Pacific who come in contact with Europeans are going to die from diseases. What the heck are Europeans doing, getting in boats and going over and like taking over 2 continents in the entire Pacific? Because they can, because they want to, and they do it. Wow. How did that happen? I mean, good grief. How did that happen? Why does that happen in history? What kinds of things are taking place? What makes it so that, put this down, Europe is going to end up by, say, 1750, the kind of rough cutoff date for this unit. Europe is going to end up with the best, bless you, science and technology. They're going to be making all kinds of improvements and so forth there. And with improved science and technology, sometimes comes the ability to, I don't know, it's like, take your pick, right? I'm going to enter into a war. Duck off, we're going to go to war. I'll give you the first choice. You choose the battlefield or what's behind door number 2. You get to choose the battlefield or what's behind door number 2. You get to pick your position on the battlefield, and I'll be in the other position, but I guess what behind door number 2, or vice versa. This is interesting. We're at war, and I'm giving him the first chance. What are you going to do? You going to choose the battlefield, or do you want behind what's door number 2? Don't you? I know what's behind door number 2, but I'm giving you the first chance, aren't I? Do you want to choose the battlefield? Okay, all right. So you pick the battlefield. I'll be on the other side of the battlefield. Think, geographically, what's a good position maybe to be in a battle? Above. So you want the high ground? All right, you get the high ground. Okay? I get modern technology for my military. Oh, that was a pretty good choice, wasn't it? And of course, they were like, that's not fair. I hate your stupid games, Mr. Hanson. You just drop rocks on me. That's true. You drop rocks on me, and I point my laser guns, and I knock you out. Write this down. If you have modern technology in warfare, you do have some really, really big advantages. Okay? And we'll see as we go through here. When the Europeans start arriving in places like the Americas, they've got the disease thing, which I don't think they necessarily intended. That, yeah, we're going to develop like disease resistance to all kinds of stuff because so many of us have been in contact with each other over many generations, like the people with bad genes have all died off, many of them. And so we've got disease resistance, but sucks to be all those people in the Americas who have like no contact, no disease resistance to those European type diseases. But here's something else that's going to be taking place. Advanced technology in Europe. Advanced technology in Europe. Things are coming together so that when Europeans start arriving, they're going to be arriving in ships. How many ships came from the Americas across over to Europe or Asia? They didn't. How did the Europeans develop that technology? We'll see how. And when the Europeans arrive, what kind of weapons do they have? Let's say there's Yakov in the Americas on the high ground with his rocks. Okay? Okay. And let's just say it's sort of like, oh, I don't know, 1400, 1500. All right. I'm trying to think. What was the year that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue? This is why, do dates matter? Sometimes they do, but I bet I could almost call on anybody. What year did Christopher Columbus sail the ocean blue?
1492.
Perfect, it rhymes. 1492. So after 1492, let's say I'm a European, they're arriving in the Americas, and there you are, Yakov, on top of the mountain with his rocks, throwing them down on me. Anybody know, what kind of weapons might I have at that time? What's the modern weapon, say, for the 1500s? Anybody know? Anybody got into military technology? Yes? Bow and arrow. He's got the bow and arrow. I've got something better than the bow and arrow. Guns, yeah. You can write that down. Guns will be developed during this time period. So we're going to see the development of guns. And that's actually a very important development because if he's up there throwing rocks down on me, or maybe he's like, I'm going to take out those invaders with knives, right? Sharp knives. Can my gun hit his knife guy before his knife guy gets to me? Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of a gun, especially as technology moves forward, guns become more precise, more accurate, and can fire at a further distance, a further range, and can fire at a greater rapidity. Those are the kind of modern technology kind of things that are really going to help. I mean, it's not fair. When the Spanish show up in the Americas and they got guns, they got steel weapons, and they also got like disease, I mean, what can you do about the disease? They're going to take over North America and South America. I mean, you look at North America and South America, someplace you can still find concentrations of populations that lived there before the arrival of the Europeans. I don't know. I'm looking around here. What continent are we on? North America. Do I see a lot of North American heritage as I look out over this scene? Where do I see mostly heritage from? How many of you guys have got, let's just take a pick, some Asian heritage, some African heritage, some European heritage. Oh, there we go. Yeah, and a lot of times it's a mix. In the United States of America and so forth, you got a mix. But as far as a percentage, that's part of what's going to be going on during this time period that we're looking at. Why was it that Europe was in a strong position to go out and take over the world and not so much other ones? That's going to be one of the questions we're looking at as we go through here. Yeah. And one of the things is when Europe does do that, they're going to be in a very good position to win any conflict, because sometimes people show up and they're like, we didn't invite you, Columbus, you and your gun-toting Spaniards. Get back on the boat. I mean, if there's going to be conflict, who's going to win that conflict? Who's going to win it? Who's going to win the battle between Yakov, who picks the high ground, and me and my guns? How many of you guys think Yakov and his rock-throwing mountain dwellers. You think? You're like, I don't know, they're good. They're pretty good. You got to see those rocks. How many guys think Mr. Hanson and his gun-toting people and so forth? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, quick question. Go for it. It's a good question. And actually, you know, sometimes in modern warfare, there was a war the United States fought in Afghanistan, and there was one particular place where the modern weapons didn't work so well. It was actually guys on horses that had better agility to move around and engage the enemy. Okay? So sometimes older weapons aren't bad. Mostly they'll pick the modern ones. Okay? In fact, by the time we get beyond this unit, by the time we get to, say, the late 1800s, you could have a British Army unit with guns, with rapid fire capacity. What do you call a rapid fire capacity gun? I'll give you a clue. It fires like it's a machine. Oh, very good, a machine gun. And you could have, like, say, a dozen, maybe 2 dozen soldiers, some of them with machine guns, some of them with long-range accurate rifles, going up against thousands of native population with spears and attitudes and very strong, and they're running at you. Who's going to win that fight? Here come you. You're going to be leading the spear group that are trying to get rid of these Britishers. And you come at us, and you're like, "Arr!" Before you even get close, we can see we're like, yeah, I mean, we're the ones laughing. They're not laughing so much. And of course, the guys next to me are like, I got that one. You see some of the battles between non-industrialized people versus industrialized, modern weaponized people, and they're not even close by the time you get to the late 1800s. Okay? So, where did this come from? Well, part of it started in Italy. Write it down. Let's go with what you know. Part of it started in Italy. Italy is in Europe. It's on the Mediterranean Sea. There you can see a little map of, like, northern Italy. If you were to look over to this map right here, we've got, okay, there's the Mediterranean Sea, okay, and there's Italy. You're like, what? Usually let's back it up to a map that you're familiar with here. Get past those ones. There it is. There's Italy, right? On the trade routes. In fact, Italy was one of the first places in Europe to experience the Black Death, because that's where it came through the trade routes. The Black Death came up through Italy and to other parts of Europe through those trade routes. And so write this down. Italy was the entry point for a lot of trade. Right? You can kind of see it right here on this map as well. We've got goods, merchants bringing goods from Asia, India, China, and so forth, across land or maybe by water, and then eventually as they're getting closer to, like, their European destinations, France and the Netherlands and Britain and so forth, a lot of it ends up on boats in the Mediterranean, and it comes up through Italy. So that's the entry point. So put this down. There's a lot of business going through Italy during the Mongol trade. And of course, a lot of Black Death going through Italy too, but, you know, let's just focus on the business part. Let's focus on the positive. Not the fact that Brielle caught a very dangerous strain of the Black Death and wiped out pretty much all of you guys, didn't? And was starting to wipe out you guys if we'd gone on further. How many guys think you would have survived 10 rounds of this? Really? You think so? Like, I don't know, unless it's proven otherwise. Innocent until proven it, live until proven dead, okay? So, anyway. So have that. Put that in there. Italy is a great entry point for a lot of trade coming into Europe. Okay? So, I mean, European merchants make money, but Italian merchants make tons of money. Why is that significant? Because there's some things that are going to take place in Italy during this time period that we're going to refer to as the Renaissance. Have you guys ever heard of the Renaissance? Have you heard of Renaissance? What is Renaissance? Everybody know what Renaissance is? Like, isn't that a school in the West Ada district that, like, yeah, you're like, you've heard of that, right? Why did they call their school Renaissance? I mean, like, it just sort of sounds like a cool Italian name. I mean, why, yeah? It's got new, and it's definitely, yeah, keep going. Close. There's the new part. It is a new birth. All right, let's talk about that. Put that down. First, the basic definition, and there's a lot of new ideas coming in there, but it's like a new birth. You're like, wow, how many of you guys want to go through birth again? No, I've been there, done that. I'm kind of grown up, kind of past that. But think of it this way. In a positive sense, it's like Europe is being born again into something great. And there really will be, make sure you put that down, there really will be a feeling among a fair number of Italians. If you're poor, you look around and go, I'm still poor. Okay? But among the people, particularly like the merchants and other people who are doing well financially, they're looking around and going, this feels new. This feels good. But you know what? It's a new good that is a reborn from a previous thing. Now let's tap into your knowledge of this. When was Italy in the past, before this time period, 1300s, 1400s, and so forth, when was Italy like ever great? Part of something great. Really, was Italy ever part of something great? Yeah, like what? Think ancient times. Do you want another clue? Think Caesar. Yeah, the Roman Empire. Write that down. The Roman Empire. What was the capital of the Roman Empire? I'll give you a clue. The Roman Empire is named after the city from which it grew. Rome, exactly. Where's Rome? It's in Italy. Very good. All right, excellent. So here's Rome on this map. Okay, it's sort of in central Italy, and it had great days back during the time of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, I mean, how big was the Roman Empire? Do you remember how big the Roman Empire was, Sophia? Do you remember? You studied the Roman Empire before, haven't you? Was it big? Like this big? Bigger? A bit bigger? Smaller? How big was it? I don't know. Did Rome control all of Italy at some point? Did it control other neighboring areas? Did it control like across the water, across the Mediterranean Sea? Yeah. The Roman Empire, think of the Mediterranean Sea. Sometimes people look at that, and during the time of the Roman Empire, it was like a Roman lake. As in everything on the north and everything on the south was Roman. And it was ruling a long time. So if we were to take a look over here at this map where I'm at. So pretty much everything on the north of the Mediterranean Sea and everything on the south of it, that would be like North Africa. And parts of the Middle East, and it even went up into parts of like Britain. Roman Empire was a big deal. So people look back, you can write this down, people look back, Italy and other parts of Europe, but particularly Italy, they look back and they're like, that was when things were great. I mean, how did that come to an end? Becca, how did the Roman Empire come to an end? I mean, it rose, and then it pretty much fell. Nope. Wasn't like that. Disease actually had something to do at times and parts with weakening the Roman Empire. I mean, who broke the Roman Empire? Who would you give a lot of credit to for like coming in and like attacking the Roman Empire and going, yeah, your Roman Empire is over? Although, make a little note of this. Make a little note. You ready? The Eastern Roman Empire still continues during this time period. So when we say the Roman Empire fell, that's the old western part, which includes Rome. But the eastern part had actually still been going on. And the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire was a place called, remember that one? Constantinople, very good. Yeah, that was kind of like the new Rome. Constantinople, which is in modern-day Turkey today, they call it Istanbul. And so we'll touch upon those guys later on, but they're sort of like, they're leftovers of the Roman Empire. But in this time period, in Italy, they're looking back and they're going, we got something great going on. We're going to bring back some things from the Roman Empire. Okay? This is an interesting question. We're going to make Italy great again. I don't know. What's going to be a good slogan for that? We're going to make Italy great. I mean, are they going to the Italians, are they going to put together the entire Roman Empire? No, but what was great about that? What What was great? What were some of the things that you think of as far as Rome? Is there going to be some things that they'll bring back, and part of it's just like a pride, and other things they're going to go, we'll kind of like forget that part. As we go through here, the Renaissance, we're going to look and go, they're going to bring back ideas and certain things from the Roman Empire, but they're also going to add some new things. All right? Here's one thing that they do bring back from the Roman times. You ready? We'll see it as part of this Renaissance unit, or at least that part of the unit that we're talking about, the Renaissance. Art. Art. Those of you guys who like art, this is the historical unit that really focuses, perhaps more than any other history unit, on art. Because one of the greatest things about the time of the Renaissance Italy is art. They do new art, but they also bring back a lot of old art that had kind of like fallen into disuse. And I'll explain that as we go through. Architecture. Actually, we'll do a quick check. Have you guys noticed that I got a lot of visuals here in this room? Raise your hand when you can identify a piece of architecture that was from the Roman Empire. Jordan, seen it? Raise your hand when you see a piece of architecture from the Roman Empire. Okay, some of you guys are tipping. Some of you guys are like, I'm going to fake you out because I've seen it. I'm going to look the other way. I'm going to look toward you, Mr. Hanson, because you see it. All right, everyone point at, you haven't seen it yet? All right, everyone point at the piece of Roman architecture. What are you guys pointing at all together? Colosseum, exactly, which was built during the height of the Roman Empire for what, like movies or like entertainment? Yes? Gladiator fights, among other things. Yeah, you get big, huge spectacles of recreations of battles or gladiators fighting each other to the death. I mean, whoa. So that style of architecture, you're going to see that coming back as well. You write that down. So Italians are looking at this and going, we want to bring back the art and make it better. We want to bring back the architecture and make it better. I'm like, where are you going to come up with all that money? Here's the first thing. Let's get right to it. Because we're going to get to some of the ideas and other things that are part of the Renaissance. But let's first like, how many of you guys have ever like had a conversation maybe with your parents and you're like, I got some great ideas of what you, parents, can get me because you love me so much. I got a birthday coming up, and there's other reasons and times and so forth that you can give me something really good. How many of you guys have ever like come forth with a list of really, really cool stuff that your parents could get you? And then the parents sort of like checked you and sort of said, well, I'll pay for half, or, I don't know. Do we have a birthday coming up? How many of you guys have ever been disappointed that your reach exceeded your grasp? Your goals on what you wanted wasn't quite met. Is that right? Does that ever happen? No, all of my goals are entirely within my abilities to get. Where did these guys, question, how are we going to get, because we're going to see some, actually, throw this out to you. Raise your hand if you can point to, I've got 2 samples in here already. 2 samples of architecture, really big structures built in Italy during the time of the Renaissance. It's amazing architecture. This one's a little harder. If you look and you're like, I don't know if I can read Italian. You think you know? You think you know? What might be one of them? That one right there? Relationship to the clock, where is it? To the left? If you go to the left, actually, that is. 2 to the left. Well, we got the Eiffel Tower for Paris. That's late 1800s. To the right. We're going to go the right, the other right. Okay. So not the Parthenon. That's ancient Greece, right? Everyone see where the ancient Greek Parthenon is? I mean, that's all sort of ruiny and so forth too. Trust me. During the Renaissance, they're like, we love Roman architecture. Write this down. They love Greek architecture too. Write this down. Because that Roman Greek thing, they love both of them. So they're going to look to both of those as being things they want to kind of bring back. And I would say, especially when you get to art, I mean, do you guys know this? Am I making this up? Who made the great art? Was it the Romans or the Greeks? Which? How many of you guys think the Greeks made the great art? How many of you guys say the Romans made the great art? Why do you say the Greeks? They did. Well, so what did the Romans do? You call them a bunch of copycats? Yeah, they were kind of. It's like, I mean, the Romans are really good at like making warfare machines and things like that. I mean, they conquered the empire. But the Greeks came up with a lot of the art and architecture and so forth, and the Romans, you know, they copied a lot of that. So, which one are you talking about? This one? No, that's India. Very good. This one? This one? This one is Italy, okay? These two are Italy. This one, you can't quite see it. If you're close enough, you can read. It's Venice. That's one of the ones we're going to be talking about here. It's in northern Italy. This, Firenze. It's in Italian. And Firenze is the Italian word for Florence. Write this down. Florence, Venice, Rome. 3 important Italian cities. These are cities that are going to be able to afford some nice art and architecture. Okay? They're going to be able to go to their parents and go, hey, we'd like to have a grand, big, new, what is that building? Anybody have any idea in Firenze what's that big, tall, domed building? What do you think that might be? What do you think it is? A school? That's an interesting idea. Because if you had a school, it's almost like if you see really big buildings, you sort of get a sense of like what the priorities of a community are during that time period. School, a really big building. It's like, wow, we love our school. And it's not a school. Nice tries. A church. You think a church? You think that's a church? You think that's a church? Is like, which church are we talking about? Like, which religion are we talking about? This is important because you're going to write this down. What is the main religion in Italy and Europe at that time? Roman Catholic Christianity. Okay, Roman Catholic Christianity. You can call it the Catholic Church. You can call it the Christian Church. You're like, well, are there other churches? Yes, later on in this unit, we'll talk about Protestant churches. That's a little bit later. If you went over to East Europe and like Constantinople, you're going to get into Orthodox Christianity. You guys remember that from previous things? All right, so there was a bit of a split, say about 1,000 years ago, between Catholic and Orthodox. And there's some other smaller Christian groups in other places. That is a big old Catholic church. Boom, write this down. The church, religion, Christianity, Catholic Church is very important during this time period. Okay? Very important. I mean, just to kind of finish the thought, if you look at a big building built today, I mean, I was watching over the weekend. There was a building, it cost $5 billion to build. It was in Los Angeles. What was that? Yeah, it's the stadium. It's like, where are the priorities in modern life today? Sports arenas, right? Or big, tall buildings, right? In New York City, you see big, tall buildings. Are those churches? Are they schools? What are they? Yeah? Yeah, business. Yeah, I mean, business is big. And so big, tall buildings and so forth, business. Okay? We're still doing okay on time. Yes. We're still doing okay. All right. So, here's the deal. First question. Help me out, Blake. Write this down, everybody. Italy has got a lot more money during the time of this Renaissance than they really had before. Blake, help me out. How, all of a sudden, is there going to be a lot more money coming into Italy that they're going to be able to tap that money and put it into things like expensive architecture and art that we're going to be looking at a little bit closer? Where's that coming from? From what? Perfect. Write it down. Excellent. This is why when we cover things, you're like, oh, good. I know that. I can apply it here. Were the Italian traders in a good position geographically to make money off of trade? Yes. Because they were trading with Asians, and they were trading and bringing their stuff up into Europe. Understand that. Listen very carefully. So these trade networks were coming through Italy, and they'd empty the boats and so forth and continue trading those further on. Does that make sense? So the Italians, write them down, it's kind of like the middlemen. You know what I mean by middlemen? I'm going to produce something, and I wanted to get to the consumer, but I can't get it directly to the consumer. You're down here. You're going to transfer it. Are you going to make any money? Yeah, you are. If you're the middleman, you buy the stuff from me. I'm the supplier. Let's say I'm in China. I make the silk, and you buy it at like 10 crowns. You take it. You sell it to the consumer, say in, I don't know, France. You sell it for 20 crowns. Who's making the money? I mean, I made some money because I sold it to you. He got the stuff, but as the middleman, the merchant, you make a lot of money because you're providing that critical transference. Okay, and if you run your business well, you'll make a lot of money. Did Italian merchants make a lot of money? Yes. And sometimes you make money directly, sometimes the money comes indirectly. All right? We got that? By the way, let me just throw this to you. Anticipate. What will happen if all of a sudden the great Mongol Empire is gone and all of those wonderful benefits of bringing goods through those travel routes up through Italy and into Europe? What will happen if it's no longer such a good deal, where you have lots of tariffs, where you have lots of security costs? Anticipate. Are you going to make as much money as an Italian merchant bringing goods up through Europe? No. How's your customer going to get that stuff that he used to be able to get at a decent price from you? Can anyone help me? We actually already tip you off on this already. If you can't get cheap goods on the old-fashioned routes, what routes are you going to take? Boat. Help me out a little bit more. Boat where? How? If we don't have to go through the old Mongol trading area that now has been carved apart, this would be like, say, 1500, 1600, and so forth. If we're not going through that way again, is there any other way to get from, say, Europe over to, like, China? Yeah, the Indian Ocean. How do you get to the Indian Ocean? By boat. How? On a boat. Give me the route. How do you get, let's say you are in Portugal. Use this map. You're right, on a boat. How do I get to the Indian Ocean? By boat. Where should I go? This way? Am I going right? I don't know where I'm going. Point me. Which direction? This way? I'm going to run into land. So I go up or down? Down. Now which way? Around. And then to the east? Yep. That's the way it's going to be done. You're going to get new trade routes. Yeah, you're like, whoa, okay. You're going to get new trade routes going by the sea later on. Okay? Are the Italian merchants going to be involved in those new trade routes that go into the Atlantic and down over into the Indian Ocean? No. Who's going to be involved in those trade routes? Portugal, Spain, France, Britain, the Netherlands. Put this down in your notes. Italy makes a lot of money during this time period while the Mongol Empire is still at its peak. Italy will make its money during this time period while the trade routes going east and west across Asia are open and secure and the tariffs are low or non-existent. But once that gets shut down, different people are going to look and they're going to follow Sophia's route. Sophia's like, I got an idea. I can get those goods, but I'm going to go by boat. I'll figure out a way to get around Africa. It'll take me a while. But once I do, I'm in the Indian Ocean and I'm good to go. And I'll get you your trade goods. So really, it's interesting because, like, I've been to Firenze. I've been to Florence. And I've seen beautiful buildings that were built during the time of the Italian Renaissance. That was their high day. That was their best days. That was when they had a lot of money. And people go there and they're like, wow, this is really cool and really beautiful and so forth. Did they continue having that massive amount of money that they made later on, when the Mongol Empire fell and the trade routes became not so workable? No. Okay? That's when we're going to see later on. We'll talk about this when the Europeans shoot out in the Atlantic Ocean and figure out ways to get to India and China to get those trade goods. And of course, Christopher Columbus in 1492 is like, darn, I can't go the Portuguese way. I got to find another way. I think I can just go directly west. There's nothing there except eventually on the other side is China and Japan and so forth. And then he bumps into America. He wasn't expecting it. Pirates are going to be a big, big problem as we go on this one. Because if there's somebody floating a boat out there with a lot of things that are really valuable, somebody else is going to float a boat right up next to it and go, that's going to be mine now if you want to live. Yeah, piracy is going to be an interesting issue as we go forward on this. Okay, so, but let's back it up to Italy. They make money during this time period. 3 cities in particular. Let's talk about Venice first. Venice, okay? Venice is an interesting city. I'll point it out right here. It's at the northern part of the Adriatic Sea, which is part of the Mediterranean Sea. It's right there. And it's literally, it's like a port city. And it's like, in fact, it's so in part of the water, most of it is canals. Merchant ships come in, and they unload, and then they transfer the things to other places. Venice made a lot of money, quite clearly, doing what? What were they doing, Keith? How did Venice make so much money? Exactly, because of trade. Write that down. In fact, Shakespeare wrote a play, The Merchant of Venice, set in Venice, about a merchant who had a lot of money or not very much? A lot of money, yeah, a lot of money. Okay, so the merchants of Venice, I mean, if you go to Venice, it's like, I don't know, they got so much money. What are they going to build? What are they going to use their money for? They got some beautiful buildings there. Now, what do you think that building is kind of in the distance there? Do you see what that building is? It's got kind of a dome. What do you suppose that is? What do you think it is? What do you think it is? A school? A stadium? A church, yeah. It's called St. Mark's. Okay? So some of the money, make sure you have this, some of the money is going into the church because the Roman Catholic Church is very powerful. And so the people who make a lot of money are like, hey, we got good relations with the church, let's build a big church. Get good relations with the religion and so forth, let's build a big church. Very good. Venice makes a lot of money, puts it in architecture, put this down as well because we're going to see some examples of this. Also puts it into art. They're like, we're going to put some money into some really good art. And we're talking about, during this time period, we're going to see some amazing artists. Anybody know some of the names of the Italian Renaissance artists? Yes? Who else? You should be able to name off at least 4, yes? Who? Leonardo, Michelangelo. Nobody else? Yes? Donatello. Anybody else? Oh, come on. Raphael, what color is he? Yep. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Botticelli should be in there too. We're going to show you, and so that'll be part of our study. Really, really good, amazing art. Now, let's back it up a little bit. Rome, write that down. Rome is also going to be a very wealthy city in Italy. And we're going to see a lot of money in Rome spent on really, really great architecture, buildings, churches, for example. And we're going to see a lot of money put into really, really cool art in Rome. Question, see if you can identify this. How does Rome make a lot of money? And I'll take away one of the things. It's not so much from trade. Rome is not on the water. For what? Okay. I'm looking for a major source of money for Rome. I'll ask it another way. Why is Rome so important? What's in Rome? I mean, in the Roman Empire, you had the emperor there. But in these days, there's still a very important person in Rome. Who's that? The Pope. Write it down. Pope. Have you guys ever heard of the Pope? Who's the Pope? You're like, you got Francis I. The Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. Is the Catholic Church a big deal back in those days? Yes, the Pope is a big deal. The Catholic Church is a big deal back in those days. And the Pope, look at this map. The Pope is in direct control of a lot of land. And if you're in control of land, you got money coming to you. But I mean, the Pope is getting money from other people. Who is giving money to the Pope? The head of the Roman Catholic Church. Do you know how churches work? Do people within that church give money? Yes, Catholics give money, and a lot of that ends up in the hands of the Pope. Okay? And so the Pope will have some of that money to spend on various different things like architecture and art. Next time we will get to, where did Florence get their money then? Because obviously they had some money, and they are building some big things too. Okay? Very good. Very good.